One Question is designed to give subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to One Question, where we highlight executive leaders in college athletics. Our guest today is Kelley Kish. Kelley is the Director of Athletics at Lake Erie College. Greetings, Kelley. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me, Ty.
Now, Kelley, last time we talked, it was day 101 on the job there at Lake Erie College, and now we are exactly at 1 year. It's interesting to talk to you and to catch up with you during this time. Of course, looking at your career, you've been in college athletics for almost 20 years, so you've seen a lot and done a lot and worked with a number of different leaders in terms of making decisions and understanding how to run things. But I guess my question for you is, when we talked on day 101, there was a lot of enthusiasm and excitement in your voice about the challenges ahead, about the celebrations ahead, and about just taking on the job and being there at Lake Erie College. Now that we're at day 365, 1 year in the chair, talk to us about where you are now in terms of your mind state. I imagine you're still just as excited.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me back, Ty. It's fun to look back and think, wow, how much this year flew by. But you're right, it still has the level of excitement that I had on day 101 and that I had on day one. It's really all about, the things that are important to me is making a difference each day that will help our student athletes be successful while they're here, and then obviously once they graduate also, and putting our coaches in a position that they can learn and grow each day and be as successful as possible. And you look back and think, okay, there is a multitude of things that have happened that you may have seen at previous institutions and thought, okay, but then there's things that walk in your office that you necessarily haven't seen and are specific to our institution or our coaches or our leadership team or our student athletes. And, really it's been a fun learning process. And I think that's the most important thing is that I have that learning mindset and that growth mindset still. And even if it's day 10,001, I still want to be able to know that I want to challenge myself to be better and be the best I can, because that's the only way that I'm going to help our department advance and ultimately serve the mission of our institution.
All right, excellent. Now, looking at the past year, and of course, when you come in and you want to accomplish things, and now you look at what you have accomplished, coming into a job and thinking about the first 100 days and the first 200 days, even the first year, early on you make some strategic decisions that may help you later on in the job. What were some of your early strategic decisions that are paying dividends now as you embark on year two?
I think, I talked a lot to you about, and I would encourage anyone to know, you have to do that listening tour, that listening and learning. So things from going to all of our SAC meetings, getting to know our campus faculty and staff, going to the different events, obviously mentors, our great AD group within the GMAC, that's just a group who always wants to learn, listen, and share. And so, just being really strategic about, again, continuing to be in that learning and growth mindset. But to me, one of the things, and even, on my interview and talking to our Vice President for Student Affairs and our President, was staffing was something that I really took a look at. So beyond the fact that I'm on our 5th head coach hire and we're moving along with that, but also looking at our leadership team. So we received the Division II Minorities and Women and Ethnic Minorities grant. So we were able to add a position through that NCAA grant program for Division II and kind of hone that in on special events and academics for us. And then I was able to reorganize our leadership team that ultimately ended up adding 2 additional members to that leadership team by combining some duties and kind of expanding some of the other areas. And so I was able to kind of observe what was important to us, watch at our events and within our support of our student athletes and our staff where we wanted to. So then that staffing now, as more and more our new staff gets more and more time under their belt, we understand what this model looks like. And again, this is my first fall since I started in November. So now I've seen a fall semester for us, and be able to see that now really become as well-oiled a machine as we can on the internal side that then strategically will free me up for a lot of the duties that I'm excited to dive into for us on the external side.
Yeah, that's got to be exciting, especially for some of your staff. New leader comes in and makes these changes and starts tweaking things, and you're wondering where they're going with it. But then now you're a year later and you say, okay, actually all this makes sense. She knew what she was doing, right? Our leader is actually pretty smart at what she was doing. That's got to feel good to you and to the people that are working with you.
Absolutely, and especially as those administrators hit their stride, it's fun to watch them grow too and grow into their position and their responsibilities, and just they get to have that impact and feel good about every day in their work, so that's fun too.
Now, one of the things you mentioned when we talked before was you wanted to be able to partner and collaborate with your campus constituents. And when I talk to a lot of athletic directors, they talk about how important that is for your student athletes and for campus that you work together to make the experience the best for the student athletes, for the fans, constituents, donors, everybody who's involved with athletics and on campus. Tell me about how you reached out and made those relationships and how that's working for you now that we're coming at the end of year one.
Sure. So, a lot of that with our campus constituents, involves the relationship with our faculty athletic representative, the faculty senate chair, the staff senate chair, and just having the opportunity to, share with them and then share with the full group, the victories that we've had in athletics. And by that, I don't mean the GMAC championships that we're winning and the progress that we're making in conference tournaments. I mean the victories of things that our student athletes are accomplishing and ways that we, again, are setting them up to be as successful as possible after graduation and while they're here. So just making sure that dialogue and that we're getting a chance to tell our story, because then it resonates across campus, because ultimately everyone wants to see our students do well, and everyone, wants to see athletics, how we play into that strategic plan across campus, and again, the ultimate mission of the institution. And making sure we're telling our story, but then also attending things outside of athletics. Going to any, whether it's a play on campus, a speaker that we have, things outside of athletics, and just knowing that we're part of the greater mission of the institution, and everything is as important to us as any athletic event could be. And then, finally, just taking part in committees, whether it's a student success and retention committee or a budget advisory committee, and just being sure that shows that athletics is part of those decisions, athletics is part of that process, and again, for me, has the also personal payoff of I get to learn more and more about different areas of campus directly through those processes.
And I imagine the faculty, they appreciate when they see you on those committees and provide input and insight from the athletic standpoint.
Absolutely, and again, just that chance to tell our story and make sure, not necessarily clearing up anything that is a falsehood, but really just, hey, let's put everything out there that this is what we're doing, and here's how our teams are working to advance us as an institution. So it's fun.
Right, exactly. Well, when you took the job last November, you came in and the school was embarking on a new strategic plan. And one of the things you wanted to do was try to figure out how athletics fits into the strategic plan by developing your own strategic plan. How far are you along in that process of a strategic plan and those type aspects?
Sure. Well, definitely is still in process, and we're working along on it. So actually last month at our staff meeting, we started the official work on it as far as doing some values clarification work within our staff. So as you can imagine, with our strategic plan, we're going to establish some core values for our department. And so we did some individual values clarification to get kind of those, that mindset and those juices flowing around what are our values as individuals that then come together to form the values of our department. And so that was the first step, and just kind of seeing the trends there around education and excellence and integrity and accountability and respect. And then community, of course, was another one that really came out, looking at those individual values. So now our next step will be, let's start to define the core values that, again, whether they're trends in what we saw from your individual's values clarification work, or ones that we think should be more overreaching and as a group. And then from those core values, then we can start to set the strategic plan and kind of mission and drive and just our guiding principles. So I felt that, the 1 year mark was probably about right to start to dive into that, both so I can help facilitate the conversation from a more informed place campus-wide, and those conversations that I'm not having to play catch-up too much. I actually, now have been here long enough to have been through, like we said, both semesters as far as now fall and spring last year or earlier this year. And so that was important to me for timing.
That values clarification exercise.
Uh-huh.
Can you give us a little bit about that process? Do you get everybody in a room, or is it like go back and think over the next 2 days and come back and let's get together? Or how does that work?
Sure. So we actually did it at our staff meeting last month. Now, everyone got to take their handout with them. It was not something that I collected and I'm over here checking off and making sure everyone did every step. But it actually was a activity that I learned through some leadership development training with the NCAA when I facilitated one of the student athlete leadership forums, in the fact that you start with a list of a lot of values that are on there, and then there's obviously room to write in, and you just keep asking everyone to pare them down and down, and then you write action statements around those values. So I demonstrate the value of inclusion when I speak up when someone speaks in a way that does not make someone comfortable in our group. And so that you're actually then drilling down from the values that you've declared to be your values. Now you've put some action statements for how you demonstrate it, how you live that value. Because again, ultimately, we can say what our values are, but we really want to make sure that we know how do we live them, or how do we show them in our day in and day out. Because ultimately, they're guiding our course, guiding our decisions day to day, and so the values need to be livable, and we need to understand them.
Right, and I'd imagine that when you get into actually developing the core values of the department, you'll want to make sure that everybody's speaking in the same language, right? Because a value of respect can mean different things to different people. So there's a process of making sure we're all learning and understanding and have a common definition. That's just an interesting process to me on how leaders and you as an athletic director, how you have to do that.
Right, and especially, again, we all, like you said, come from different places where things might mean different words, mean different things to us. And so getting on the same page that this is a value that we can believe in and that we can live. And what does that mean? And you're exactly right. It will be very important, our definition, and again, the action, the ways to put it into action around it as a department. It's going to be a fun process as we keep moving month to month along the way. Again, starting last month with the personal look-in, and then what we'll roll out at our staff meeting this month to continue to guide that process toward ultimately having some guiding principles and a true strategic plan to show our values.
Well, my final question here is relative to being on the job for a year, thinking about your progress throughout your career, going from, working up the path to the AD chair. And if you had an opportunity to talk to a room full of people who were brand new athletic directors, what would you tell them about the challenges of the job coming from your experience now after a year in the chair?
Sure, and I do think this is a much different answer on day 101 versus today and a year, because by now, I've seen that things walk into your office, there's fires to put out, there's a lot to consider at a lot of different times. But I think that if it's someone transitioning from being, a number 2 or on a leadership team at an institution and transitioning to an AD and leading their own program, or if it's just changing institutions, a lot of times you hear the cliche of, hey, it's lonely at the top. But I don't know. I look at it a little differently. I don't think it's lonely. I think, if anything, it's actually, to me, from my leadership position, it's actually very full up here. There's a lot to consider because you have with you all the hopes and dreams of your student athletes and their future. You have with you the trust and the belief of your staff, and that you are the leader for them and going to make the decisions that are going to help advance the department and help grow them. And then you also have with you the overall higher education and what your institution means in that for the academic mission of your institution. So it's far from lonely at the top. In fact, it's just you want to be sure that you're diving into all those different pieces that you're doing with each decision. So if anything, I would just say the advice or a challenge to look forward to, because I think it's fun and it's awesome and it's what drives me every day, is that you represent so many and get to make a difference each day with those decisions. So even when there's those days that the decision isn't going to be the popular one, but it's still in the best interest of the institution or of the department, you know that you have to make it considering all those different parts and just be prepared for that, because it is a big change just moving over the one seat, and it's far from lonely because there's so much to consider with everything you do, which is the great part of making that impact and making that difference each day. And that's been the fun thing in these 365 days, is seeing what I have done, which is really what we have done to advance us and make a difference across campus, and then just for our student athletes day in and day out.
All right. Well, it sounds like you have a plan for moving forward. It sounds like the staff is bought in. The decisions you made early on are paying dividends now, and I assume will continue to pay dividends. And I really appreciate you joining us here on One Question.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate the time to share, because it's always nice when you give me this check-in of day 101 when I went, oh my gosh, yes it is, and then day 365 it is, and just because of each day flowing and going and you get your head down and you're working on things, it's neat to have these check-in points with you, Ty, so I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am. I'm glad you joined us again. That was Kelley Kish. She's the Director of Athletics at Lake Erie College, and she's been on the job for 1 year and sounds just as excited when she was on the job at day 100 or 101 and as she is now on day 365. And of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of One Question is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.